Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Real Estate Council of Alberta, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you and thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us for our information session about getting licensed. We hope to keep our presentation brief but thorough. As you can see from the agenda, we'll be covering a lot of information throughout the presentation. To that end, we ask that you hold on to your questions until we have concluded the presentation. You can then input any questions you have into the Q&A dialog box. We'll respond to as many questions as we can before wrapping up around 7:30. Tonight's presentation provides general information about eligibility, education, and licensing requirements and processes. If you have questions about your specific circumstances, we ask that you contact the Registration Services team by phone or email during regular business hours to discuss them. Our contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation. We'll be emailing a copy of the presentation and a recording of this information session to all participants. With that, let's get started. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the Registration Services team and to RECA. I'm Shauna Risden, the Registration Services Manager. Joining me tonight are three of our registration specialists, Christina, Crystal, and Nancy. Registration specialists are RECA's experts in eligibility and licensing requirements. They respond to incoming inquiries by phone, email, and in person, and they review and process all eligibility and labor mobility applications and licensing documents. They'll be assisting me in responding to your questions at the end of the presentation. All members of the Registration Services team are RECA brand ambassadors, and we strive to embody RECA's values. We aim to protect, inform, and elevate through all of our day-to-day interactions with applicants and licensees. Our goal is to surpass RECA's service excellence principles as we carry out our important function of vetting applicants and their credentials. RECA licenses and regulates three distinct but related industries within Alberta: real estate, mortgage brokerage, and condominium management. Anyone who provides these services to consumers in Alberta must be licensed through RECA. An often overlooked but important distinction to make is that property management and condominium management are different areas of practice. In fact, property management is a sector within the real estate industry. Condominium management is a separate industry altogether. If you want to be licensed in one of these industries, you've come to the right place. There are three primary phases in the path to getting licensed: the eligibility phase, the education phase, and the licensing phase. Depending on your circumstances, you may have to complete all the steps in the education phase, some of these steps, or none of them. We'll cover all the information you need to know about the three phases as we get further into the presentation. Before you get started in the first phase, eligibility, we recommend that you carefully review the eligibility requirements that are applicable to your circumstances and ensure you can meet them, as your application fee is non-refundable. If you have determined that you meet the eligibility requirements for your particular circumstances, you can get started by creating a MyRECA account and completing the first-time login process. The answers you provide in the first-time login process will guide you to the correct eligibility or labor mobility application. Complete the relevant application and pay the application fee. Once you have completed payment, you can begin uploading your identification documents. Contact any third parties that will need to send documents to us on your behalf. The first phase you must complete in your path to getting licensed is the eligibility phase. You must meet certain eligibility requirements before you can enroll in and complete pre-licensing education or have your non-Alberta license recognized through Labour Mobility. We'll cover these requirements in depth over the next several slides. It's important to note that there are different requirements depending on your path. Let's dig in. All applicants must meet the first eligibility requirement, which is to provide proof of their identity and ability to work in Canada. RECA is mandated to protect consumers and the integrity of the industries we regulate. Registration specialists employ rigorous identification measures to ensure RECA achieves its mandate. The first identification document that all applicants must provide is a profile photo. Your profile photo should be clear, face-centered, and should not obscure your identity. Keep in mind your profile photo will be visible to RECA staff and your future broker. The second identification document that all applicants must provide is a source identification document, such as a birth certificate, PR card, proof of Canadian citizenship, or a valid work permit. This document contains your full legal name and is the name that will appear in your MyRECA account and on your future license. If your source identification document does not include a first name, your MyRECA account and future license will not include a first name either. If you are a work permit holder and your work permit contains a study restriction, your course provider will have to confirm that they will enforce the study restriction. The third identification document that all applicants must provide is a copy of one piece of government-issued photo identification. There are several examples of this type of identification that you can provide. Make sure this identification document has been issued within the past 5 years and hasn't expired. The second eligibility requirement that all applicants must meet is proof of English proficiency. Licensees must be able to practice proficiently in Alberta's official language. RECA's minimum English proficiency standard is successful completion of English 30 in high school or equivalent. If you completed your education in Canada, you can request your high school, college, or university to send your transcript directly to RECA. If you didn't graduate high school but received your GED, you can request Alberta Education to send it to us. If you completed your education outside of Canada, you can have your international high school, college, or university transcript assessed by a member of the Alliance of Credential Evaluation Services of Canada and sent directly to RECA. Not all members of ACESC include the language of instruction in their assessments. Your assessment must state that the language of instruction for your course or diploma or degree program was English. If you're unable to provide a Canadian education transcript or an assessment of your international education, you can have your English assessed by one of the institutions listed. There are minimum scores that you must meet for each of these tests, and your test must have been completed within the past 3 years. The third eligibility requirement, proof of completion of a minimum of high school or equivalent, applies to new licensees only. If you hold a license in another Canadian province or an international jurisdiction outside of Canada, this requirement does not apply to you. If you are a new licensee applicant, not a Labour Mobility applicant, and you completed your education in Canada, you can request your high school, college, or university to send your transcript directly to RECA. If you didn't graduate high school but received your GED, you can request Alberta Education to send it to us. If you completed your education outside of Canada, you can have your international high school, college, or university transcript assessed by a member of the Alliance of Credential Evaluation Services of Canada and sent directly to RECA. The fourth and final eligibility requirement applies to Labour Mobility applicants only. If you're licensed in another jurisdiction within Canada or hold a license abroad, you must provide proof of licensure in good standing. Your licensing history must be sent by the regulatory body in your originating jurisdiction directly to RECA, and it must include your disciplinary history. Once all required supporting documents have been received for your eligibility or labor mobility application, your application is complete and will be automatically submitted to our processing queue. The Registration Services team processes applications in the order they are received. We receive between 150 and 200 completed eligibility and labor mobility applications every week. This is in addition to the dozens of other applications we receive, along with managing consistently high call and email volumes daily. You can help the Registration Services team review and process incoming applications and respond to calls and emails in a timely manner by viewing the status of your application and required supporting documents in your MyRECA account instead of contacting us for updates. Once your application is complete and has been submitted to our processing queue, you can expect an email with the outcome of our review within the next several business days. You can view our current processing times on the MyRECA login screen or on the My Applications page of your MyRECA account. Much like the eligibility requirements, the education phase differs depending on your circumstances. New licensees that are not licensed in another jurisdiction must complete pre-licensing education and exams before they can apply for their license. Canadian labor mobility applicants are exempt from pre-licensing education and exam requirements. International labor mobility applicants are exempt from pre-licensing education but must successfully complete the related exams. All pre-licensing education courses must be completed through a recognized course provider. Pre-licensing exams are developed by RECA and administered by our partner, Measure Learning. Once you have completed the first two phases, the eligibility phase and the education phase, you're ready to move on to phase 3, licensing. If you haven't already, you'll want to meet with a few brokers to find a brokerage that is a fit for you and get your criminal record check, or CRC, underway. When you have found a brokerage and we have received and processed your CRC, your broker will initiate your licensing application for you through MyRECA. The entire licensing process is completed online, and provided there are no suitability matters that the registrar needs to review, your license will be issued automatically in a few simple steps. As a first-time licensee in Alberta, you must provide a current criminal record check, or CRC, to be eligible for licensing. Your CRC must be less than 6 months old at the time you apply for your license. When you're ready to apply for your license, complete the digital CRC application through your MyRECA account. We'll get the results in a couple of days from our partner, Mintz Global, and we'll email you when we've received and processed it. All first-time licensees must demonstrate that they are of good character and are suitable for licensing. Certain events that have taken place in the past may bring your character into question. Events such as bankruptcies, discipline, criminal charges and convictions, and certain civil judgments must be disclosed at the time of licensing and could impact your ability to get a license. If you're concerned about something in your past that may impact your suitability for licensing, you may request an opinion from the registrar as to your suitability. This is called a suitability review. If you choose to undertake a suitability review, your eligibility application fee includes this. We do not recommend that labor mobility applicants request a suitability review. The intention of a suitability review is to avoid the significant financial and time investment in completing pre-licensing education and exams prior to applying for and being refused a license due to suitability concerns. We've included a comprehensive list of resources to assist you along your journey to getting licensed. We've also included our contact information should you need help along the way. As mentioned, we'll email this presentation to you when we've concluded our Q&A session so that you can refer back to this page or any page in the presentation at any time.
Hi, everybody. We've just launched a poll. If you wouldn't mind answering a couple of brief questions. If you have a question, oh, sorry, let me pause that. If you have any questions that we didn't cover or you want a little bit more information about the things we did cover, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. Because of the size of this group, we do have the all attendees muted, and so you can't we can't unmute you and take your questions verbally. So if you do have a question, please post it in the Q&A, and do please take a moment to complete our poll. Thank you. We'll let a few questions come in and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. I see a few questions have come in here. I do want to just sort of preface our question answering with the reminder that we're providing general information. It'd be quite difficult to review everyone's individual circumstances. We do recommend that if you have a specific thing and you're trying to find out if that will meet our requirements, that you refer to the resources that we presented. And you should be able to find the section that refers to your question and compare your document to that section. But I do see a few questions already coming in about that. So first question, I have an ECA report for my bee farm. Would that work for English? So that's one of those types of questions. We're not able to adjudicate everyone's special circumstances, but Nancy, at a high level, could you cover the question in terms of English proficiency for an ECA report for a bee farm? I'm not sure I know what that is exactly.
Yeah, so in general, if you're expecting credentials from outside of Canada to meet English proficiency, they have to be assessed by a member of ACESC. That's that link that was provided earlier. And we want a copy of the assessment report sent directly to RECA. If the assessment indicates that the language of instruction for your program was English, or if you have an IQAS report that includes a table at the bottom that shows an equivalent to grade 12 English in Canada, that would meet the English proficiency requirement. If it does not, then you would have to have an English assessment completed.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm going to share my screen. Nancy, can you confirm you can see my screen here? Okay. So in terms of the various types of documents that we accept for the various requirements and who we will accept those documents from, I would strongly recommend that you come to the guide to applying, whether it's eligibility, labor mobility for Canadian or labor mobility for international applicants. And again, if your question is about English, you can go to requirement 3, which is English proficiency. You can see what we'll accept, what type of assessment we might accept, and compare your personal circumstances to the requirement to determine whether it would work or it would not work in terms of meeting our requirements. Okay, next question. Can you start an application at any time, or is it specific dates? Assuming you're referring to an eligibility application perhaps, or labor mobility. I'm not sure actually if you're referring to a licensing application. There's no time where we black out applications. Anybody can start an application at any time, but there are some implications if we're talking about a licensing application, where you may want to consider where you're at in respect of the licensing period. If it's about to end, you may want to wait. You might be bumping up against our fee reduction period, and therefore you might want to wait as well, depending if you have an expiry date at play. But in terms of eligibility and labor mobility applications, there's no time frame where you can't apply. I hope I answered that. Okay. Can you get licensed anytime? So I sort of covered that as well. Yes, you can get licensed, provided that you're eligible. You've met all of the eligibility requirements. You just may want to factor in things like the end of our registration period, our fee reduction, and make an informed decision. How long will it take to get an applicant and credentials profile? Nancy, I'm going to hand that over to you. It's from a Nancy.
Weird. Okay, I'm not really sure what this Nancy is getting at, but I'll explain maybe the timeline sort of in general. You have an unlimited amount of time to complete your eligibility application, which means provide all of the required documents. Once your application is complete, it submits to our processing queue. We generally review those applications within about 5 to 10 business days, and you'll get an email once your application is complete. Once it's approved, you can go complete your education. Again, we don't set deadlines for that. The course providers do set education-related deadlines, which you would find out from them. Once you've completed your course, you have 3 months to pass the exam. And then when you've completed both of the required courses, you would have 1 year from the date you complete your practice course to get licensed with a brokerage in Alberta.
Thanks.
I hope I hit it.
Yeah, I think you covered everything. There's lots of different timelines, I think, is the main story here. And you should be informed about what your various deadlines are and timeframes are. And if you're ever unsure, contact us. We can confirm your specific requirements and deadlines for you.
Yeah, and we do provide some just-in-time information as well as people move throughout the process. So once you hit, your eligibility is approved, for example, we send you an email that tells you about enrolling in your education. So we do feed you information when you need it as well.
Great. Okay. Do we need to work for a brokerage in order to get licensed? Yes. Individuals in Alberta are not eligible to be licensed in and of themselves. All licensees in Alberta are registered with a brokerage, and unless you're the broker yourself, you would have to find a broker and brokerage to register your license with. Okay, are there different levels of licensing, i.e. level 1, 2, 3? Yes and no. So in real estate and mortgage brokerage, there's no levels to the license. You have different license classes. So you could be licensed as an associate. That's sort of where most people begin. You could, over time and with additional education, upgrade your license class to, in real estate, we would have an associate broker option or broker. And in mortgage, you could upgrade to broker. The one different industry is condominium management. We do currently have what's called a graduated licensing program, where a condominium manager could be licensed with a condominium management brokerage. If they are in that graduated licensing program, level 1 or level 2, they would have a significantly restricted license, meaning there are certain activities they can't do at all, certain activities they can do, but only under close supervision. And they would have educational requirements that they would have to meet within a set time frame to move through that graduated licensing program. So there's more information on our website. I think I'm still sharing my screen. I'm just going to pop back. So I'm not sure if you were asking about condominium management or another industry, but if it is condominium management, if you go to the licensees and learners section on our website and go to the condom manager licensing page, it spells out all of the information I just covered in terms of graduated licensing program, the different levels, what the various restrictions are, and timelines and such. Do you have to pay yearly fees for renewal? Yes, you do if you want to continue to practice. So our licensing period or registration period runs from October 1st to September 30th every year. Those individuals who want to continue on practicing in the next period would need to renew their license by that September 30th deadline. If you have a parked license, for example, you've unregistered with a brokerage, you're taking some time off, there is no obligation to be paying like a maintenance fee for your license, but you would have to reinstate it within 3 years or it would be expired. Okay, this looks like an interesting question. What's the best way to be truly successful in real estate as an agent? My work experience has mainly been sales, both inbound and outbound, and I personally would like to know if brokerage firms train agents to be better and confident in prospecting techniques. So that kind of a question would probably be best fielded by our information services department. You can email them at info@reca.ca. The primary focus of registration services is administering the licensing requirements. We don't have a lot of information in terms of like brokerage training systems. I know I'm a former agent myself. I know that there's some systems out there you can kind of purchase that are on the market to help people gain some skills. There might even be programs and courses you can take through your local board, but registration services really doesn't focus on that side of the industry. We're here to sort of administer the eligibility requirements, renew people's licenses every year, and deal with the actual mechanics of licensing. Okay, well, how are we doing for time? So we're about almost 3:30. We're going to keep going for about another half hour. If we have lots more questions, it looks like we do. But we will be wrapping up right around 4 o'clock. And I just wanted to mention, if we don't get to your question, there's a possibility we might not. You can certainly send us a follow-up email if we don't answer somebody else's question that's similar to yours. Okay, do you need to be under a brokerage during renewal? Again, if you're practicing and you're registered with a brokerage, which you would have to be if you're practicing, and you wish to continue to practice, then you would have to renew. If you're in that parked state where you're not registered with a brokerage, you're taking a break, and you're not practicing, you don't have to renew. Your license kind of stays in that sort of parked state for 3 years before it expires. I hope I answered that. Next question, what are the fee reduction times? Does this mean people have the option to pay less than usual at these times? Yes. So we reduce our fees during the last quarter of the registration period, which, as I mentioned, is October 1st to September 30th. So the last quarter is July 1st to September 30th. July 1st, we reduce the licensing fee itself. We also reduce the RECA premium. And so as long as you don't have a deadline that you're working against, like your course might expire before July 1st, or your criminal record check may expire before July 1st, it's probably advisable. We're sitting at June 12th. We're talking a couple of weeks from now. It's probably advisable to wait. You can save a couple of $100 if you wait till July 1st. Just if you're not sure what your deadlines are, please confirm them. Give us a shout, send us an email. We will double check all of your dates and make sure that you don't miss something, because if your education expires, you have to redo it. It's a big risk. If you are not sure, make sure you find out.
Yeah, and I think also it's not the application fees don't get reduced. So your eligibility application fee and labor mobility fee don't change.
Thank you for clarifying that, Nancy. Yep. Yep, we don't reduce the fees for non-licensing applications. So the eligibility, any other type of application fee that we might have. That's right. Okay. When is the renewal month? If it's October and I complete my course by April, how does the license expiry work? So if, yes, it is October. So the renewal month, it's actually 5 weeks. We start in August, but that's okay. So the renewal period we refer to is mid-August roughly to September 30th. So we don't late renew. You can't renew in the past. You would have to pre-renew for the next year. If you complete your course by April, your license, I mean, if you get licensed after you complete your education, we would issue your license effective sometime in April, presumably. You would still have to renew it by the following September, so just a few months later. So that is something that you want to factor in terms of where you're at in the registration period, whether you want to wait, whether you can wait. Again, if you've got other deadlines that you need to factor in, you may not be able to wait. But if you have a license issued prior to September 30th, even on September 30th, if you get your new license on September 30th and you want to continue to practice beyond that date, you have to renew. So make that, that decision with those factors in mind. Oh, Nancy, other Nancy has thanked you for your response. And
we like to stick together, us Nancys.
Yeah, she has a follow-up question. Are there different class of license for commercial and residential properties? Do you want to wing that or do you want me to dive into that one?
I'm fine. Yeah, I can do that. So both commercial and residential real estate are sectors of one real estate license. There are 4 sectors. So there's residential, rural, and commercial real estate and property management. And so you have one license with different sectors attached to it. And so the license classes would be an associate, which is somebody who's authorized to sell. An associate broker has all of the education required for a broker, but is not in charge of a brokerage. And then a broker is actually overseeing a brokerage. So those would be the 3 license classes. You can only register your real estate license with one brokerage, though.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, these questions are bouncing a little bit. I'm sorry. I think we're getting towards the bottom. That's a first. Keep the questions coming if you have anything. This is a rare occurrence. Is there a list of potential condominium management brokerage firms that can be approached to join? Not so much. I will say, and I'm still sharing my screen, I'm going to just navigate to the Find a Licensee search tool on our website. You can search brokerages by city, let's say Calgary, and you can search by industry, and you can see all of the brokerages we have in any particular industry. We have no idea who's hiring, who's interested in having new people join their brokerage. You may have to reach out to quite a few. I know some of our brokerages advertise on, websites like Indeed, word of mouth, but RECA is really quite silent in terms of recommending brokerages or referring people to brokerages for licensing because we're the regulator, we're neutral and silent on that question. If I complete the property management course, can I open a consultancy business or do I need to complete all 4 areas with RECA? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by consultancy business. I think we'd need a lot more information about that. I'm not sure if you mean brokerage, perhaps. I would suggest that you email our information services department. Again, you can reach them at info@reca.ca. And they can guide you, answer your question. They may have some follow-up questions based on how you framed it there. Okay, can I be licensed in different provinces in Canada? Nancy, do you want to field that one?
Yes, you can. The different industries are regulated provincially. So for example, if you had a real estate license in both BC and Alberta, your BC license would be registered with the BC brokerage and your Alberta license would be registered with an Alberta brokerage, but you could practice in both provinces. You don't have to be a resident to practice.
I'm just going to add to that, that's sort of RECA's stance on things. You might, if you are licensed in multiple jurisdictions, you probably want to check with the regulatory body in each of those jurisdictions to find out their position on it as well. There might be some prohibition, you know, in another province that we're not aware of in terms of being licensed across different jurisdictions. Okay, next question. These are getting interesting. On getting the license successfully, do we need to have insurance of license also? If yes, how much does it cost usually per year? There's a whole lot of particulars around insurance. So if you're in the real estate industry, you're automatically going to subscribe to a group insurance policy that's administered by the Real Estate Insurance Exchange. That's legislated. There's no opting out. Each individual that's licensed in real estate has to subscribe to that program, and that provides your errors and omissions insurance. There might be other insurance you need. You should probably talk to an insurance consultant to find out all the different areas of insurance you might need as a licensed professional. Mortgage industry is a little bit different. So that particular industry is quite a bit smaller in comparison to real estate. And so there is no group insurance policy that has been set up in Alberta for mortgage. Each mortgage brokerage has to carry its own errors and omissions insurance for the brokerage and all the registrants with that brokerage. The prescribed amounts, I wouldn't worry about necessarily as an individual licensee. If you have questions about insurance, you could talk to your broker. Again, you may want to talk to an insurance specialist to find out if that is adequate coverage for all the areas of your business. Condominium management is similar to the mortgage industry. The condominium management brokerage would have its own policy that's sort of an umbrella over the whole brokerage and all of its registrants. The other, I'll talk a little bit about the assurance fund, which is similar. It is protection, but it's for consumers against fraud and breach of trust that may be committed by a licensee. And the individual, the consumer in question, would need to have a judgment successfully rendered against the licensee, and then they can make a claim against the assurance fund to pay that out. So there's errors and omissions, and then there's the fraud side of things. But again, when you're working as a licensed professional, there may be other areas of insurance that you need to explore. So do have a conversation with an insurance professional, or get a little more information from your broker if you're not connected with someone in the insurance world. Oh.
Shauna, there was a previous question about, can you please go through requirement 1, which is the ID? So maybe we should go through that, because we do get a lot of questions about, particularly if someone has a passport, what they need to submit for ID.
Sure. Okay, so I'm still sharing my screen. You can still see it, Nancy?
Yeah.
Okay, so the identification requirements are pretty comprehensive, because we're not just confirming your name, your date of birth, for example, but we're really confirming identity. Certain documents we know can have different names, altered names, missing names. And so we can't rely on those documents so much to confirm your identity and legal name. We're also concerned about your ability to work in Canada. We're not so concerned about your citizenship per se. We're not trying to confirm your citizenship. We're really trying to confirm that you are who you say you are. We are meticulous in confirming identity of all of our applicants. So Essentially, under the identification requirements, every applicant needs to provide a profile photo. That's going into your RECA account. That will be visible to licensing staff, that will be visible to investigators, and it will be visible to your broker. At some point in the future, it may also be visible to consumers through that public license search page that I showed you. So you want to make sure it's a professional-ish photo. It needs to really depict your identity. So if someone were to compare that photo to your actual person, they could say, yep, this looks like the same person. So nothing obscuring your face, no hats, nothing too old. I know we're all getting, you know, a little on in years, and it's nice to pull out the old photos, but try and make it a current one. So your proof of identity, this is really the source of all other identification that you get throughout your life. So if you're born in Canada, you're issued a birth certificate, you have other identification documents that are sort of built on that source document, your passport, your driver's license, etc. If you are not born in Canada, you could be perhaps issued a work permit. You may have gone beyond a work permit stage and become a permanent resident, and it's possible that you've gone beyond that and become a Canadian citizen. So that column here, this proof of identity, that is your source identification document. It's possible that you have a different name now as a result of marriage, divorce, legal name change. So your secondary ID or your government issued photo ID may contain a different name, but we're going to want to link that together. So if you've done a legal name change, we're going to want to see proof of your name change. If your name is different because of marriage, we're going to want to see your marriage certificate. If you've been divorced, and that's what, you know, maybe there's been a few instances back and forth. We just need to kind of link all those names together so that we can trace back to your source name. They're not interchangeable. So sometimes we see folks that perhaps they're a citizen, so they weren't born in Canada, but they're now a citizen. They've been issued a passport and they've lost their citizenship card, and they question why we won't accept the passport as proof of their identity. Again, we know that on passports, driver's licenses, other secondary identification documents can have modified names. We've seen many instances where names are missing altogether, they're in different order, spellings have changed, so we can't rely on your passport to confirm your identity. And again, it's not about confirming you are a citizen. If you've lost your citizenship card, you can get it replaced. That's not really what we're after. We're trying to confirm your identity, the spelling of your name, linking your names together, and then ultimately all of those boxes need to be ticked off for you to become eligible. Nancy, is there anything you want to add to that?
I think just we get a lot of questions around people who have misplaced their source identification. There is no substitute for that document. So if you don't have it, you're going to have to order a copy before you can complete your application.
Yeah. Yeah, and your application, oh, sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish first. This was just something else.
Okay, I was going to say, you know, it might take a little while to get that document replaced, but your application won't expire in the meantime. So don't worry about necessarily that piece. It will delay you. It's probably a good idea before you get everything started and get all gung-ho and excited. Make sure you have these documents available. If you don't, chances are we're going to have to hold you back a little bit until we get them. Okay, Nancy, go ahead. Sorry.
The other thing I noticed a few questions about was how long it takes to complete the course and what the fees will be. So maybe we should show everybody where to find that pre-licensing education.
Sure. Yep, good suggestion. So back to our website. Under the licensees and learners section, we have so the licensing and renewal stuff, which is most of what we've been talking about, but we do have this little corner for education. And if you go to the pre-licensing education link there, depending what industry that you're considering joining, if you expand that section, it'll tell you what the courses are that you need. It'll list all of the recognized course providers that are offering that particular course. Again, we don't set the fees or the timelines for education courses. That is determined by the course provider. So you may have to contact a couple of these folks to find out their fees, what are their timelines. The information that we do provide and collect is the number of exams that have been attempted, because RECA administers the exam. The course provider delivers the content of your education, but RECA delivers the pre-licensing exam. So we do have some statistics that would be really important to someone in determining which course provider they want to go with. How many people have written the exam? And that sort of just indicates the robustness of these next two numbers, which are how many people out of 100 pass the exam. So the success rate is listed there. You're probably going to want to find one with a higher success rate, because that indicates that the course material very closely aligns with the exam. People who take this course are more successful in writing the exam. And then the average score, that's just sort of interesting to note. The passing score for each pre-licensing exam is 70%. So obviously the higher the average score, maybe something to factor in as well. But you've also got cost at play. So this is a really good resource in terms of people that are considering getting in. Maybe you've been approved for eligibility and now you're ready to register with a course provider. These course provider that are listed here in the table, these are actually links to that course provider's website. We don't have information on how to enroll. Each course provider may have a different way that you would go about enrolling. It might be a platform, it might be paper-based. So you can click on these links and go directly to the source of the information. If you have questions, follow up directly with the course provider. We don't have information on all of the course providers' ins and outs. There's just too many of them. The other thing I'll let you know is that for each of these courses, so you would have to complete a fundamentals and a practice course to be complete in your pre-licensing education. For each course that you complete, so the two different courses, you would have 2 attempts to complete the exam. And again, the passing grade is 70%. So if you don't quite make it to 70% the first time, you do have another opportunity to write. But each exam attempt does carry its own cost as well. So you should be aware of that.
Somebody asked if the success rate includes first and second attempts or just first attempts.
I don't think I know the answer to that question. What I would recommend is that you email our credentialing department. They're the ones that create the exams, administer the exams, and put together these numbers. So they'll be able to answer that for you, and you can get them at credentialing@reca.ca. Okay, next question. We've got about 10 minutes left. The questions are slowly pouring in, so that's great. Does eligibility expire? That's a tricky question. So if you're in the midst of completing your application, so you've started it, you've paid for it, you're getting documents, getting your third-party documents coordinated and sent in, that phase of the eligibility application doesn't expire. You can take as long as that takes. Once your eligibility application is approved, the answer is it depends. We don't currently monitor eligibility applications, but we are working on programming to look at the various requirements within that application because they can expire. So if you have a work permit, for example, that has an expiry date, we are putting together programming that would go and find that application and expire it on that date. The other example would be an English assessment. So your English assessment needs to be current within the past 3 years. And so if you give us an assessment today and it was done 6 months ago, 2.5 years from now, it's going to hit that 3 years old mark. And so we'll want to be making sure that folks who maybe haven't enrolled in their courses yet are still as proficient in English as they were when we approved them. So That's the eligibility application side. In terms of licensing eligibility, which it's confusing because there's two kinds of eligibility that we're talking about, but I'll just repeat something that Nancy mentioned earlier when she was going through the various, time frames that apply to these phases. Once you've completed your education, you have 1 year. So your eligibility, your licensing eligibility in that case expires in 1 year. How do you determine number of hours of course was completed? We don't. I'm not sure what that means. So we don't have a set number of hours required for pre-licensing education. It's course by course, and it takes as many hours as you need. I don't know that course providers even have sort of a number of hours metric, certainly not a requirement. They may have like an average number of hours that it takes to complete their course, but we wouldn't have any information about that. That's maybe something you could ask the course provider if they have something like that that's measured, just to give you an idea, but that's not something that RECA has. Okay, so I don't see any current open questions. Oh, one just popped in. The criminal record check pertains to money fraud rather than assault associated with. I'm not sure if he had a chance to finish that thought before he hit enter. I'm going to just take a stab at it, and if I'm off, clarify, please. So a criminal record check is a background check. It will contain all records, whether it's fraud related, assault related, DUIs, any criminal code conviction will show up on a criminal record check. Even if it doesn't, though, a word of advice, when you're completing your licensing application, even if it doesn't show up on your criminal record, but there's something that's captured by the question, the suitability question on your application, answer it honestly. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to prevent you from getting your license, but hiding that fact may. So make sure, even if something isn't showing up on your criminal record, you disclose everything that you're aware of so that, down the road, we don't find out there was something hidden, because that can actually have a lot more consequences. Is it difficult to move between brokerage within Alberta? Oh, I see Crystal's typing an answer there. Let's jump over that one. Okay, what is the average completion time of most candidates for pre-licensing and after? We had this question last time, and unfortunately we don't have a comprehensive sort of timeline. Nancy covered sort of the expiry dates and deadlines that are relevant throughout, but we don't have a breakdown of, how long does the eligibility stage take. It's very individual. It depends highly on your motivation, your drive, how quickly you can get things to us, how quickly you complete your education. Some people can go from sort of starting the application to licensed within a very short period of time, a couple of months even. Some people drag it out over a couple of years. So we don't really have, it would be very difficult to kind of consolidate all of that into sort of a rough timeline. Okay, just a few minutes left. Can we practice in an area of Alberta outside our broker area, i.e. in a brokerage in Calgary, but get a listing in Edmonton? So that's not something that the Real Estate Council would control. That's sort of a board type of question. So when you're licensed by RECA, you're licensed in the province of Alberta. Where you practice is irrelevant to us. If your brokerage is in Calgary and your broker wants listings in Calgary and the board in Edmonton requires a membership there, and your Calgary brokerage doesn't want to be a member of the Edmonton Real Estate Board, then you'd have a conflict there. You'd probably have a barrier that you wouldn't be able to get over, because you can't be licensed with the Calgary brokerage for your Calgary deals and an Edmonton brokerage for your Edmonton deals. So that's something you would need to talk with your broker about, probably the board, if your broker's not sure. And again, our information services department is kind of more of the practice side of the equation. We're really in the business of administering the eligibility requirements and licensing requirements. I just happen to know that answer because I practiced in real estate and I had that exact same question. So great question. Okay. I know we need to do a criminal check, but do we also have to do a character concern check, or is it included in the criminal check? I think I know what you're asking. I hope I answer this correctly or in the way that you're thinking about it. So good character encompasses criminal background, financial background, discipline background, civil judgment background. So good character is the umbrella term that we use for all of those areas. So your criminal check is part of your background, if that makes sense. Okay, we're going to take this question that just popped. Oh, nope, somebody must have answered it. Okay. Oh, Nancy, you're muted.
Sorry.
No worries. Did you have anything you wanted to add as we wrap up?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us. As mentioned, we will be emailing the presentation and the recording out. So if not today, probably tomorrow you'll receive it. Really thank you for joining us this afternoon. And again, if we didn't get to, well, we got to all the questions, it's empty, that's amazing. Thanks for the thought-provoking questions. But if there's something that occurs to you after we've wrapped up, again, you can always reach out to us. You can give us a call, send us an email, registration@reca.ca, and we would be happy to help. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.